was January 20th, 2026 at 20:47 m, when a dream so violent, so consuming drove me to the cliffside garden overlooking the terrace vineyards of the valley below. And there, surrounded by ancient olive trees, whose gnarled branches reach toward a sky ablaze, with stars so bright they seemed to pulse with living fire, the air thick with the scent of rosemary, and wild thyme growing between the weathered stones. Jesus appeared before me with tears streaming down his face, and spoke words that shattered everything I thought I understood. Jonathan, before February ends, a protection will be sealed. Those who see this message truly see it, have been marked by my Father. But most will scroll past their own salvation. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen with every fiber of your being. Before I continue, I'm asking you, please leave your prayer requests in the comments below. I read them. I pray over them. And if you're a true believer, someone who wants to go deeper than the shallow waters most Christians wade in, subscribe to this channel right now. This isn't entertainment. This isn't me promoting myself. I'm Jonathan Roumie. You might know me as the actor who portrays Jesus in The Chosen. But what happened to me on that cliffside 3 nights ago has nothing to do with acting, and everything to do with a reality so urgent, so immediate that I'm risking everything to share it with you. The temperature that night had dropped to near freezing. I could see my breath-forming clouds in the darkness as I climbed the stone steps leading to the garden, each step worn smooth by centuries of pilgrims and workers who'd walked this path before me. I hadn't planned to be there. I'd been asleep in the small cottage I'd rented for a month of prayer and fasting, seeking God's direction for this year when the dream came. In the dream, I saw a massive book, ancient, bound in leather that looked like it had survived fire, and an angel with eyes that burned like molten gold was writing names in it with furious speed. But then the angel stopped. He looked up directly at me and said, "The marking period is closing. February is the seal. Tell them." Then I saw the book slam shut, and the sound of it was like thunder that shook me awake. My heart pounding so hard, I thought it might break through my chest. I knew I had to go to the garden. Don't ask me how I knew. I just knew. At 51 years old, living alone, no children to worry about, no wife to explain myself to, I've learned to recognize when God is calling me to move. So I threw on my jacket, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way up that ancient path in the middle of the night. The garden sits on a cliff edge about 300 feet above the valley floor. During the day, you can see rows upon rows of terrace vineyards stretching out like green rivers flowing down the hillsides. Stone walls, some of them dating back to Roman times, hold the earth in place. But at night, at nearly 30 in the morning, it's a different world entirely. The darkness is so complete that the stars become overwhelming. Not just points of light, but living presences. The Milky Way stretched across the sky like a river of diamonds. And I remember thinking how small I was, how insignificant. I walked to the edge of the garden, where a low stone wall is all that separates you from the drop. The wind was picking up, coming from the valley below, carrying with it the scent of earth and grapevines and something else. Something I can only describe as ancient. My hands were shaking, and not just from the cold. I could feel something building in the atmosphere like the pressure before a storm. That's when the light came. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't subtle. One moment I was standing in darkness, and the next the entire garden was illuminated, as if someone had turned on 1,000 spotlights. But the light wasn't harsh, it was warm, golden, alive. And in the center of that light, standing between 2 olive trees that had to be at least 500 years old, was Jesus. I've portrayed him for years. I've studied his face, his mannerisms, his words. I've prayed to him my entire life. But nothing prepared me for the reality of his presence. He was more solid, more real than anything I'd ever seen. The stones beneath my feet, the wall behind me, even my own hands. Everything else seemed like a shadow compared to him. He was weeping. Tears ran down his face, catching the light, and each tear that fell to the ground seemed to make the very earth glow where it landed. He was wearing simple robes, and his feet were bare on the cold stone. But what struck me most were his eyes, filled with such a mixture of love and grief that I fell to my knees without thinking. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice was like nothing I can adequately describe. Imagine the deepest cello note, combined with the clarity of a bell, with an undertone that resonated in your chest. Do you know why you're here? I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. I just shook my head. He walked toward me, and with each step, the plants around him seemed to lean in his direction. The rosemary bushes, the wild thyme, even the ancient olive trees, all bending slightly as if in worship. He knelt down in front of me, right there on the cold stone, and placed his hand on my shoulder. The warmth that radiated from his touch went through my jacket, through my shirt, straight into my bones. I need you to tell them something, he said. And most won't believe you. Most will mock you. But there are those who have been marked, chosen before the foundation of the world for this specific moment. And they will hear. They will recognize the truth because my Father has prepared their hearts. Tell them what, Lord? I finally managed to whisper. He stood and walked to the edge of the cliff, looking out over the dark valley. The wind picked up again, stronger now, whipping his robes around him. When he spoke, his voice carried over the wind, clear and powerful. Before February ends, a sealing is taking place. Not everyone can see it. Not everyone is meant to see it. But those who encounter this message, truly encounter it, have been marked for protection. What's coming requires preparation. What's coming requires those who are willing to be set apart. I stood on shaking legs and moved closer to him. Protection from what? He turned to face me, and the grief in his eyes deepened. Jonathan, the church, my bride, has been lulled to sleep. They think they know what protection means. They think they're safe because they attend services, because they say the right prayers, because they've said a sinner's prayer once in their lives. But I'm telling them through you. Protection isn't automatic. It's not a blanket that covers everyone who calls themselves by my name. The wind suddenly died completely. The silence was so profound, I could hear my own heartbeat. Jesus raised his hand, and the scene before us changed. The valley below, which had been dark, suddenly illuminated. But what I saw made my blood run cold. I saw churches, thousands of them. But they were empty. Not physically empty, but spiritually empty. People sat in pews, stood with raised hands, sang songs, but there was no light in them. They were going through motions, and above each church, I saw something that made me want to weep. I saw angels standing outside, unable to enter, their faces filled with sorrow. Do you see? Jesus asked. Do you see what I see? They've locked me out while claiming to worship me. They've replaced relationship with ritual, intimacy with programs, my voice with their own preferences. Then the scene shifted. I saw individuals scattered across the world, and these people were different. They glowed with an inner light. Some were in their homes on their knees in prayer. Some were in their cars, worshiping as they drove. Some were at work, but even in the midst of their daily tasks, they were connected to something beyond themselves. And above each of these people, I saw angels standing guard, massive beings with swords drawn, creating a perimeter of protection. These are the marked ones, Jesus said softly. These are the ones who will see your message and recognize it. Not because you're special, Jonathan, but because I've prepared them to hear. They've been crying out for truth. They've been hungry for more than what the modern church offers them. They've been willing to be uncomfortable, to be set apart, to be called radical. I was trembling now, and not from the cold. Lord, why me? Why are you showing me this? He turned to me with such tenderness that fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. Because you understand what it means to portray me without becoming me. You understand the difference between performance and presence. And because you're willing to look foolish for my sake. What I'm asking you to share will make people question you. They'll say you're using my name for views, for attention, for money. But you and I both know the truth. The scene before us shifted again, and this time I saw a calendar. The pages were flipping rapidly, and then they stopped on February. The entire month glowed with a golden light, and then I saw it. I saw a door, massive and ancient, and it was slowly beginning to close. The marking period is closing, Jesus said, his voice urgent now. Those who are meant to be sealed for what's coming must respond before this door closes. It's not about salvation. That door remains open to all who truly call on my name. This is about something different. This is about being set apart for protection, for purpose, for a specific calling in the days ahead. What days? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What's coming? He looked at me with such intensity that I had to fight the urge to look away. Shaking, separation, the revealing of what's real and what's pretend. Jonathan, the comfortable Christianity that's been preached from most pulpit, is about to be tested by fire. And those who have built their faith on convenience, on prosperity, on being blessed without being broken, they won't survive what's coming. But those who are marked, those who are sealed, those who are willing to be protected by walking in complete obedience, they will not only survive, they will thrive. They will be my light in the darkness. The wind picked up again, and with it came a sound. At first I thought it was the wind itself, but then I realized it was voices. Thousands, maybe millions of voices all crying out. Some were crying for help. Some were crying in worship. Some were crying in despair. The sound was overwhelming, and I covered my ears. But it didn't help. The sound wasn't external. It was internal, resonating in my spirit. These are the prayers of the marked ones, Jesus said. These are the ones who have been crying out, asking why they feel different, why they don't fit in the modern church, why they're hungry for something more. They're scattered across the earth, feeling alone, feeling like they're crazy. But they're not alone. They're not crazy. They're mine, and I'm gathering them. He walked back to where I stood and placed both hands on my shoulders, looking directly into my eyes. Tell them this. If they're seeing this message, if something in their spirit is responding to these words, they've been marked. It's not random. It's not an algorithm. It's not chance. My Father has orchestrated this moment. But they must respond. They must act. They must choose to step into the protection I'm offering. How? I asked desperately. How do they respond? What do they do? Jesus smiled then, and it was like the sun breaking through storm clouds. That's what I'm going to show you over the next 3 nights. Tonight was just the beginning. Tonight was just opening your eyes to see what I see. Tomorrow night, come back here same time and I'll show you more. The light began to fade. I reached out, not wanting him to go, not wanting this moment to end. Wait, Lord, wait. I have so many questions. He was already becoming translucent, the garden returning to darkness. But his voice remained clear and strong. Tomorrow night, Jonathan, tell them what you've seen. Tell them they're marked. Tell them time is short. Tell them February is the seal. And then he was gone. I stood there in the darkness, my heart pounding, my mind racing. The stars were still bright overhead, but they seemed dimmer now compared to the light I'd just witnessed. The cold hit me then, and I realized I was soaked with sweat despite the freezing temperature. My legs felt weak, and I had to sit down on the stone wall, my back to the cliff edge, trying to process what had just happened. The scent of rosemary and thyme was stronger now, as if the plants themselves had been awakened by his presence. I could hear the wind moving through the valley below, rustling through the dormant grapevines. And all called out from somewhere in the darkness, and the sound seemed both ordinary and profound at the same time. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually the sky began to lighten in the east, the first hints of dawn touching the horizon. I made my way back down the stone steps of the cottage, my mind spinning with everything I'd seen, everything I'd heard. And now I'm telling you, if you're watching this, if you've made it this far, something in your spirit is responding. You're one of the marked ones. I don't say that lightly. I don't say that as manipulation. I say it because Jesus himself told me that those who are meant to see this will see it and they'll know. You felt different, haven't you? You felt like you don't quite fit in the modern church. You've been hungry for something deeper, something more real. You've been crying out for truth, even when that truth makes you uncomfortable. You've been willing to be set apart, even when it means being misunderstood. That's the mark. That's the sign. That's how you know. Tomorrow night I'm going back to that garden. Jesus told me to return. And I'll share with you what he shows me next. But I need you to do something right now. I need you to make a decision. Are you going to dismiss this as the ramblings of an actor who's lost touch with reality? Or are you going to allow the possibility that God is speaking? That you've been marked? That there's a reason you're seeing this message right now? Leave a comment. Tell me you're marked. Tell me you're ready. Tell me you're willing to see this through, no matter where it leads. Because tomorrow night, the revelation goes deeper. Tomorrow night, Jesus promised to show me the scope of what's coming and why this protection is so crucial. The door is closing. February is the seal. And you've been marked. I barely slept after that first encounter. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those churches with the angels standing outside, unable to enter. I saw those individuals glowing with inner light, protected by warrior angels with drawn swords. I heard Jesus' voice echoing in my mind. February is the seal. The day of January 25th crawled by with agonizing slowness. I tried to pray, tried to read scripture, tried to prepare myself for whatever was coming that night. But I felt like a man standing on the shore watching a tsunami approach, aware that something massive was coming, but utterly inadequate to meet it. I want to stop here and address something, because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking this sounds too dramatic, too convenient, too much like a script. I'm an actor. I understand the skepticism. But I'm 51 years old, and I've spent my entire adult life learning to distinguish between imagination and reality, between performance and genuine experience. What happened on that cliffside wasn't imagination. The weight of it, the terror and beauty of it, the way it's marked my soul, that's not something you can manufacture. And for those of you who are feeling that stirring in your spirit right now, that recognition, that sense of this is for me, that's the mark. That's how you know you're meant to see this. The comments from yesterday's video have been overwhelming. Thousands of you saying, I'm marked. Sharing your own experiences of feeling different, of not fitting in, of hungering for something more. I've been praying over each one, and I'm telling you, Jesus was right. He's gathering his own. You're not alone. You're not crazy. You're marked. As the sun set on January 25th, I felt the pull again, stronger this time. It was as if an invisible cord was attached to my chest, drawing me toward the cliffside garden. I left the cottage at 20:30 a.m., giving myself time to climb the path slowly to prepare my heart. The night was different than the previous one. Warmer for one thing. The temperature had risen to maybe 50 degrees, unusual for late January. But more than that, the atmosphere itself felt charged, like the air before lightning strikes. The stars were partially obscured by high, thin clouds that caught the moonlight and turned the sky into a silver canopy. As I climbed the stone steps, I noticed something I'd missed the night before. Growing between the stones, in cracks that seemed too small to support life, were tiny flowers. Even in the darkness, I could see them. White petals that seemed to glow with their own faint luminescence. I knelt down and touched one, and the petal was soft, impossibly delicate. How are they blooming in January? How are they surviving in these harsh conditions? They bloom because they're rooted in stone. A voice said behind me. I spun around, and there he was, Jesus, standing on the path about 10 feet below me, his form radiating that same golden light, but softer tonight, less overwhelming. He was smiling, and the smile was both sad and proud at the same time. Lord. I breathed, and I felt tears spring to my eyes immediately. The reality of his presence hit me even harder than the night before. Maybe because I'd spent all day half convinced I'd imagined it. He climbed the steps toward me, moving with easy grace, and gestured to the tiny flowers. These bloom in winter because they've learned to draw life from the rock. Their roots go deep into the cracks, finding moisture and minerals that surface plants miss. They're small, they're overlooked, but they survive when everything else dies. He looked at me intently. That's what the marked ones are like, Jonathan. They've learned to root themselves in me, the rock, rather than in the shallow soil of popular Christianity. They draw life from deep places. They bloom when everything around them is dormant. They're small in the world's eyes, overlooked, often dismissed. But they survive, they thrive, they endure. I stood, my legs still shaky, and followed him up the remaining steps into the garden. The olive trees seemed even more ancient tonight, their twisted trunks and branches creating shadows that danced in his light. The scent of rosemary was overwhelming, mixed with something else. Was that frankincense? Myrrh. I couldn't place it, but it was intoxicating, sacred. We walked to the cliff edge, and he stood looking out over the valley. The terrace vineyards below were visible in the moonlight. Row upon row of carefully tended vines, each one supported by the stone walls that held the earth in place. The sight was breathtaking, the geometry of human cultivation working in harmony with the natural slope of the land. Do you see the terraces? Jesus asked, his voice quiet but clear. Do you understand what they represent? I looked at the vineyards, trying to see what he was showing me. They're a way to farm on a hillside to prevent erosion. He nodded. Yes, but they're more than that. Each terrace is a level, a place of stability carved out of a slope that would otherwise be unusable. The walls hold back the earth. The walls create space for growth. Without the walls, without the structure, the soil would wash away and nothing could grow. He turned to face me, and his expression was serious. The marked ones are like these terraces, Jonathan. They're willing to be structured, to be contained, to have walls in their lives that hold back the chaos. The modern church preaches freedom without boundaries, grace without holiness, love without truth. But I'm telling you, true growth requires structure. True fruitfulness requires walls that hold back the flood of worldliness. The wind picked up coming from the valley, and it carried with it the scent of earth and growing things. Jesus raised his hand, and suddenly the scene before us transformed. I could see the vineyards, but now they were alive with light. Each vine glowed, and I could actually see the life flowing through them from the roots up, through the trunk out into the branches, and into the fruit. It was like watching blood flow through veins, except this was golden light pulsing with vitality. This is what I see when I look at the marked ones. Jesus said, I see the life of my spirit flowing through them. I see connection. I see fruitfulness. But look closer. I focused on the vines and then I saw it. Some of the vines were disconnected. They looked healthy on the outside, green leaves, even some fruit, but there was no light flowing through them. They were drawing life from somewhere else, from the soil, maybe from their own reserves, but not from the root. These are the ones who call themselves mine, but have severed the connection, Jesus said. And his voice was heavy with grief. They look alive. They produce what appears to be fruit, but it's not my fruit. It's not fruit that will last. And when the testing comes, when the heat intensifies, when the drought arrives, they'll wither. They'll die because they're not truly connected to me. Then he showed me something that made my heart sink. I saw a wave coming, not water, but fire. It swept across the landscape, and the vines that were truly connected, the ones with light flowing through them, they survived. The fire passed over them, and they remained. But the disconnected ones, the ones that only appeared to be alive, they burned. They were consumed. And the terrifying thing was how many there were. For every vine that survived, 10 were consumed. No, I whispered, Lord, no. That can't be right. That can't be the ratio. He turned to me and tears were streaming down his face again. Jonathan, I take no pleasure in this. None. Every single one of those burning vines is someone I died for. Someone I love. Someone I've been calling to deeper connection. But they've chosen comfort over commitment. They've chosen entertainment over encounter. They've chosen the approval of people over the approval of their God. I felt sick. When is this coming? It's already begun, he said quietly. The fire is already burning, but most can't see it yet. It's burning in the spiritual realm first, separating the real from the false, the connected from the disconnected. But soon, very soon, it will manifest in the physical realm, and then everyone will see. He walked along the cliff edge, his hand trailing along the low stone wall. This is why the marking is so crucial. This is why February is the seal. Those who respond to this message, who take it seriously, who choose to deepen their connection to me, they're positioning themselves to survive what's coming, not because they're better than others, but because they're willing to be rooted in the rock. They're willing to have walls that hold back the chaos. They're willing to let me prune them, shape them, structure them. I followed him, my mind reeling. Lord, how do they do it? How do they deepen their connection? What are you asking of them? He stopped and faced me, placing his hands on my shoulders again. The warmth of his touch was like fire, but it didn't burn. It energized, it clarified, it strengthened. First, they must acknowledge the truth that most of what passes for Christianity in this age is shallow. It's entertainment. It's self-help with Bible verses. It's social club with worship music. I'm not in it. Oh, they use my name. They sing songs about me. They preach sermons that mention me, but I'm not there. I'm standing outside knocking, waiting to be invited in. The scene shifted again and I saw what he was describing. I saw massive church buildings, state-of-the-art facilities, thousands of people in attendance. The production value was incredible. Lights, sound, graphics, everything perfectly orchestrated. But as I watched, I saw Jesus standing in the parking lot outside the building, knocking on the door. And no one heard him. They were too busy with the show. Then the scene shifted, and I saw a small group of people gathered in a living room. Maybe 15 people sitting in a circle, some on couches, some on the floor. There was no stage, no lights, no production. But in the center of that circle, Jesus sat. He was speaking and they were listening, really listening. Some were weeping. Some had their hands raised in worship. Some were on their faces on the floor. And the presence of God in that room was so thick, so tangible that I could feel it even in the vision. Do you see the difference? Jesus asked. Size doesn't matter to me. Production doesn't impress me. What I'm looking for is hunger. What I'm looking for is desperation. What I'm looking for is people who want me more than they want to be entertained, more than they want to be comfortable, more than they want to fit in. He released my shoulders and walked back toward the center of the garden where the oldest olive tree stood. Its trunk was massive, probably 8 feet in diameter, twisted and gnarled with age. He placed his hand on the trunk and the tree seemed to shudder, as if responding to his touch. This tree is over 800 years old, he said. It survived droughts, storms, wars, diseases. Do you know how it survived? I shook my head. Deep roots, he said simply. Its roots go down over 30 feet, finding water sources that surface plants can't reach. And it's been pruned, Jonathan. Severely pruned. Look at the scars on the trunk. Each one represents a branch that was cut away. The tree didn't want to lose those branches. It hurt,